Hello and welcome to the 71st edition of OctoPrint on Air. As always, I'm your host, Gina Heuske, and well, it's been a while, so let's always just talk about what I've been up to since the last one of these and what the next steps are going to be as well. So, first of all, what I've been up to. So since the last edition of OctoPrint on Air, I released 2.0.0 RC2 on May 19th with various regression fixes and also a new version check for ForgeDo or Codeberg. Specifically, as I mentioned in the last one of these, GitHub stability issues have caused some people to move their repositories over to other forges already. Um, to be honest, I expect some more plugins to maybe do that as well. And more options are always good in any case. So OctoPrint from 2.0.0 onward will also support doing version checks against ForgeJo, or Gitea, basically, a fork of Gitea, which is what Codeberg runs on, which is basically like an alternative to GitHub. But ForgeJo is something that you can also host yourself. So I went with general ForgeJo support and also specific Codeberg support, where you can just set it to Codeberg and then it will use the right host. It will know which host to use to check your versions for your plugin immediately. Whereas with just ForgeJo, you will still have to set that in your plugin. All of that is, of course, documented on docs.octoprint.org on the next branch, or rather on the 2.0.0 RC docs on how to do that. Yeah. What else did I do? It has been a while, right? I also went to PyCon Italia in late May, and this is actually where I wanted to show you some photos because I gave a talk. Behold, I gave my first talk at PyCon Italia, and it was about basic security for open source maintainers. So I pretty much explained, if you're an open source maintainer, what you need to do in order to make your project ready to receive security reports, and also how to know which ones are good and which ones are bad and such. And I was very, very nervous about this one because it was basically the first time that I ever went on a stage in public about about security stuff. But the feedback was quite good, so that was a huge relief for me. Speaking of security, I also met Jacopo again. So that was really nice to meet again and spend basically the whole conference together, watching talks together, talking a lot about OctoPrint, but also about other stuff, and getting some cocktails together as well. And last but not least, I also want to give a huge shout out to the amazing staff of PyCon Italia, because they also got my support plushie, Timothy, its own speaker badge, because of course he was also with me on the stage. And so that way people at least knew why, because he's a speaker as well. Okay. Then once I got back from PyCon Italia, what happened? I released on June 23rd, which at the time of recording this is exactly 1 week ago. I released OctoPrint 1.11.8. And that was slightly unplanned, I have to say. But on, oh God, June 6th, I think it was, I got a security issue reported, which turned out to have a high score. And so I had to actually look into releasing yet another bug fix release for 1.11, and that is 1.11.8. It contains 2 security fixes, one of which was a cross-site scripting problem in suppressed command notifications, which I had known for a while about, moderate score, and reported by Jacopo, and also fixed by Jacopo, actually. And yeah, I had that still in the pipeline for any 1.11 bug fixes since March. and then decided to include it in this one, of course, as well. Otherwise, the fix would have gone into 2.0. And the other one was sadly a repeat performance, basically. You might remember that with 1.11.2, I fixed a security issue where it was possible to exfiltrate files via upload endpoints by creating some weird requests that then got handled wrongly on OctoPrint side, or rather by its upload handler, and that caused problems where it was possible to tell OctoPrint, hey, here's a file path, please push this into the uploads folder, and then I can download it there if I have uploads permissions. Thank you very much. And that got fixed back then in 1.11 too, but not completely. And it turned out there were various ways to bypass the fixes that I did back then. So on June 6th, I released a report about this and I hope I get this name correctly, and if not, then really, really sorry. I don't have a pronunciation guide here, by Ko Jun Sheng. And I verified this finding on June 8th, and then I spent the next 2 weeks basically working on the mitigation for this problem, together with Jacobo, who also kept checking the code again and again and again, and found several additional, more and more complex bypasses. So the initial problem reported by Ko Young was fixed quite early, but then, yeah, we got a long run of more fixes and more fixes and more fixes, thanks to other possible ways to bypass. Because when you start looking closely at code that was vulnerable, you sometimes also find more vulnerabilities, and that was the case here. Now it is probably the best checked code in all of OctoPrint. And I also added new test cases that now run on every commit on CI that check against these specific bypasses for this specific vulnerability. And I will also add further tests in the future for other security issues like that, where I can easily test them through, by sending prepared responses and requests and checking if the responses look correctly. Yeah, so that got fixed as well and released with 1.11.8. And because one release on one day is boring by this time, on June 23rd, I also released 2.0.0 RC3 because of the security fixes. I didn't want to leave those of you running a release candidate vulnerable to this specific vulnerability, especially to the file exfiltration one. So I decided to push that on the very same day, on June 23rd, with these fixes and also everything else that I had already prepared during the second half of May, and also the first half of June, basically, for the third release candidates or the regression fixes and such. This was actually the first time ever I did a stable and an RC release in one day, and I was a bit worried that the update check would not properly figure this out, but thankfully everything worked. And to manage this in one day, I did the tests for the release candidate, so the update tests, a day before, so on June 22nd, as I expected more issues there, which didn't show up, so everything was fine there. And then on June 23rd, I did the update testing and the tagging and everything for 1.11.8, and ran through everything by midday and released both 1.11.8 and something like 3 or 4 minutes later 2.0.0 RC3. And then something broke in the release workflow for 2.0 for the third RC. I had merged the fixes from the 1.11.8 file exfiltration issue to 2.0.0, including the new tests that I had built, but I forgot to adjust the tests to actually use the versions of the Python versions of 2.0.0, because 2.0.0 no longer supports Python anything older than Python 3.9, but it was still set to test against 3.7, and so the whole workflow failed to run. And apparently, or at least that is my current guess, that made the GitHub release not show up on its API, and such the version checks on OctoPrint not work because it never saw the new release, and that was weird, and it took me a while to actually figure it out. So I had a local instance here that I wanted to update, and I tried again, and it just didn't show up, and I was wondering, and I was checking the cache, and then I checked the API and saw that on the API the release was missing, but I saw it in my browser, so I tried an anonymous tab, and there the release was also missing, and that was the point where I slightly panicked. Because I didn't know, did I now have to do a new release of basically RC4 just to get the workflow to run? I had, of course, fixed the problem in the meantime that originally made it fail, or what was I supposed to do here? So I first tried something easy, and that turned out to actually be the solution here. I simply edited the release text and added an HTML comment in there that is not visible in the release notes. I could also have just added some white space somewhere or set a comma or whatnot. And then I saved that, and then suddenly the release popped up. So I don't know if this was just some weird GitHub issue that ended up just accidentally happening at the same time that the workflow failed, or if the failing release workflow somehow hit the release, but without it being visible anywhere on the UI. So that was really weird. But in the future, I think I know what to do in such a case. Just add an HTML comment. But that is actually something that I have to look up if other people have seen this as well, and maybe even ask the people at GitHub, because that was certainly behavior that caused a lot of stress and was completely unexpected. But yeah, lessons learned, I guess. Okay, so what is in the third release candidate? Of course, apart from the security fixes, there are also various regression fixes in there. So a bunch of stuff was reported for RC2, something like, I think, 9 or 10 regressions, and those were fixed. I also found a thread leak in the serial port connection, which turned out to not be a regression, but which actually is a long-standing bug that is also present in 1.11. But that, it was a bit too risky to fix this with the security release, so I did not patch it in 1.11. Should another bug fix release for 1.11 be necessary, I might still patch it, but for now, that is going to be in 2.0. I also got a report that CrealityPrint thumbnail extraction was not working with OctoPrint 2.0, which has built-in thumbnail support, but it actually uses the G-code thumbnail tool that I built for it. For that, and that was missing a test case basically, and I had to develop blind, and once I actually had a test G-code file to work against, I could quickly add support for these specific thumbnails, so that then worked as well, and RC3 depends on the fixed version of the G-code thumbnail tool. I also did some minor improvements, like I noticed with the Bamboo connector, which has some custom state reporting that also puts marks on the temperature chart about all of the stuff that it does before printing. Yeah, that could get crowded quickly, as I noticed, and I also saw that the chart marks were able to break lines. So suddenly you had like a chart mark that was like 3 lines wide, and that looked really, really weird and off. And So I fixed that, and I also added an option to hide everything non-stock. So if your chart feels too crowded, you can just disable anything that is not the stock marks, like print starting, printing, paused, resumed, canceled, done. I think that was about it. And since we've seen a bunch of Vibe-coded plugins on the OctoPrint repo ever since the beginning of this year, basically every single one that for which we got a registration request was one. We decided to go with a new tag for those, which is AI-developed, and that tag is now visible on the plugin repository on plugins.octoprint.org, but I also added it to the third RC of 2.0 that you can also get this visualized in the plugin repo browser that is built into the plugin manager. And I also added 2 filter options to allow you to filter out, or rather to hide, any commercial plugins or any Vibe-coded plugins. So that should hopefully help you make informed decisions about what you trust or what you want to install and what not. Okay, what else did I do? I've done a lot. I also started, or rather continued, working towards 2.1. Yes, 2.0 is not out already, and not out yet, and I'm already looking at 2.1. But yeah, I'm using the time when I'm not working on regression fixes for 2.0, and as long as I don't get anything reported there, 2.1 it is. So Weasel gave me the heads up, and a big thank you for that, that there are some big changes coming with Debian Trixie. Just so that you know why that is important to OctoPrint. So if you have Octopi running, Octopi is based on the Raspberry Pi image for its hardware, and that in turn is based on Debian. And while the current Octopi image is still on the previous Debian version, I always get them confused, but I think it is Bookworm. The next one, or rather the current one, is Debian Trixie, and Debian Trixie changed something, specifically on how it handles the temporary files folder. So /temp on your Raspberry Pi image so far was, yeah, basically just something that ended up on your SD card. What you wrote on there ended up on your SD card. And with Trixie onward, it by default is a RAM disk. So it ends up in a specific part of your RAM. So nothing gets written to your SD card. Your SD card sees less use that way, so it will probably hold longer. The problem, though, is that the size of said RAM disk is limited to half your system RAM. So if you have a Raspberry Pi with 1 GB of RAM, that means your whole temp can maximally grow to 512 megabytes. If you have a Raspberry Pi that only has 500 megabytes of RAM, it means that your temporary folder can only grow to a size of 256 megabytes. Megabytes. That would also be, megabytes. And that, of course, is a bit of a problem, given that G-code files can be way larger than this if it is a really long print. So the thing is that ever since version 1.1 or something, like 10 years plus ago, OctoPrint has always first written uploads to /temp, or rather to the system temporary folder on Windows. That is wherever that lies. So it uses the Python temp file module in order to determine where to write. But yeah, it's always used the temporary files folder to work around memory limitations. So when you upload a 500 megabyte G-code file to OctoPrint, what OctoPrint will do is it will not try to load all of these 500 megabytes into memory, but instead it will first write all of that to the file system, to /temp, and then it will work with this file. And actually, that thing that handles all of that is also what had the big, dangerous, horrible security issue inside that got hopefully fixed for good in 2.0.0 RC3 and 1.11.8. So that part was always in there in order to not have a big G-code upload die on a Raspberry Pi just because it happened to be bigger than the RAM available on the platform. Putting /TMP into a RAM disk that is half the size of the Raspberry Pi's available RAM is a bit problematic in that case and kind of defeats the whole purpose of doing these shenanigans in the first place. So what I have done now for 2.1 is that instead of writing temporary uploads to /TMP, I'm going to write them to a temporary upload folder inside your base directory, which will also get nuked on every single server start, just in case the automatic cleanup after an upload doesn't work because something crashes or something. That will work around the problem that uploads are now suddenly limited by the size of your RAM again, which, yeah, as I said, was something that I found a solution for over a decade ago, and then DB and Trixie decided to change things. I mean, I completely understand why they did this. It certainly has several advantages, especially on something like an SD card, but yeah, if your device is quite RAM limited, then this can also cause problems. So I think it is better to be able to upload large G-code files or backups, and maybe putting some more wear on your SD card, which you will have to swap a couple of every 2 years or something like that anyhow, versus not being able to upload backups or large G-code files at all because of this RAM limitation. So here we are. Speaking about backups, this problem also affects the backup restore specifically because when you restore from a backup, OctoPrint will unpack to the temporary file, temporary folder or temporary file folder, because this is the only location that OctoPrint can reliably depend on being able to write to, which is outside of its base directory. So that put me a bit into a bit of a pickle because I cannot write to the base dir when I want to replace the base dir with the backup restore. So what 2.0 will instead do is it allows you to at least see if there is a problem by checking the file, the available file storage space in the folder where OctoPrint would write the backup, the unpacked backup to. And if that exceeds the, if that is less than the uncompressed size of the backup, then it will show you an error. For that, of course, I had to first be able to check the uncompressed size of the backup. So I do this both now in the browser when you upload a file to restore, as well as in the backend for all of the backups that you already have. And because it might be a bit tricky to understand what I'm talking about here, let me quickly Let me quickly move you over to my screen again here, because I have a screenshot. So these gray lines here in the backup list, those are new. It will show you the version the backup was made under, as well as its uncompressed size. The compressed size you always already had in this column here with the size, but as you can see, uncompressed size 260.9 megabytes versus compressed size of 86.1 megabytes. There is a bit of a difference here. So even if the 86.1 megabytes don't fit inside, will fit into your temp folder, into your RAM, or into half your RAM, maybe the 260.9 won't, and I need to be able to detect this. So this is something that OctoPrint will now check again and against. And if this uncompressed size is larger than the available temp file storage plus, I think 50 megabytes of buffer, then it will mark this as red and disable the restore. Likewise, if you upload a backup to OctoPrint, it will do this in the same in the browser. So it will check the zip file. It will unpack it slightly in the browser and read the version number from it as well as the uncompressed size. And again, if this is larger than the available temp storage, then it will tell you. And the idea here is that I still have to write that to also link an FAQ entry that explains to you how to do the restore in such a case via the command line interface, because OctoPrint has a command line interface for restoring from backups, and you already had to use that for backups that are larger than 1 gigabyte anyhow, because I had to put an upload limit somewhere. And the command line interface will also have a new parameter --temp, TMP, with which you can define a temporary folder where to unpack the backup to. And that is something that I will put into the FAQ entry. And I will also put into the FAQ entry how to disable this temp FS stuff on Trixie, in case you want to do that, which personally, with my own installations, I will probably do. But yeah, so this is all in preparation for the next Octopi image, basically, which will be based on Debian Trixie. So that stuff works with that. But currently it is only in 2.1. I also am strongly considering backporting this to 2.0 as well, because first of all, those are really some nice UX changes there, with the information about the version that the backup was made in, and also the uncompressed size. The version is also important because OctoPrint will refuse to refuse to restore from a backup that was done with a newer version than it is running under. Looking at major and minor, not a patch. So, for example, if you have create a backup under 1.11.8 and you're now trying to restore that under 1.11.7, that will work. But if you try to restore that under 1.10 something, that will not work. And that is the idea here. That will also now get checked by the backup plugins, backup plugin, and so you will know that something cannot be restored before you try, instead of running into an error. And there will also be some better error messages in such cases as well, should you for some reason run into the error after all. Yeah. So that was basically most of the past weeks. Also, there was the worst heat wave that I've ever experienced in Germany. You might have heard about that on the news, no matter where you are, because all of Europe was suffering from that. I had temperatures going up here to 41 degrees Celsius in the shade. That is absolutely not normal for central Germany. And I think we also broke the general temperature record of all time several times last week with this. And it certainly is not normal for central Germany in June specifically, and also not in August or something else. We've never seen these temperatures in this country so far. And yeah, inside here, the temperatures got up to 31 degrees Celsius, which, yeah, that was not something where my brain still wanted to compute. German homes usually don't have AC. Our homes are built to keep warmth in because of cold winters, not to get it out, and certainly not to cool the inside down. So that sucks. I do have a portable AC in my office, but this is only for work. And that also, well, it kept the room to 26, but that was it. And the constant hot cooler, whenever I had to go to take a pee break was also hard. So, yeah. Anyhow, so that was why I also decided against recording this last week when I originally had planned to do it, because I didn't want to record it with the AC running because of the noise, but I wouldn't have been able to record it without the AC running because of the heat. So that was a bit of a problem. But yeah, on Monday, the temperature dropped to something like 10 degrees. So that is good. Today it's Tuesday. We are still, I mean, we are back up to 30 outside, but at least it's only 30 and not 40. So that is good. Things are more in a normal space again, and my brain is less mushy. So hooray, hooray. With that being said, what are the next steps? So I'm saying 2.0.0 with a little question mark. The thing is, so far, nothing was reported on RC3. No regressions currently, no issues, nothing. And if it stays this way, then yeah, well, I think we just will have to consider 2.0 stable, because if no one is reporting something and I cannot find something, then or anything, then it probably, yeah, then it should go out the door, right? The problem though is that so far I'm only seeing something like 430 instances actually testing the RCs on the tracking. So it would be really nice to see some more testers. So if you're watching this and so far figured, no, I don't want to try the 2.0 RC because maybe it's very, very unstable. It doesn't look to be very, very unstable. People are happily printing with it, but maybe your specific setup is something that no one has tested. So please, please, please help test this release candidate. And also, I'm still seeing a bunch of printers, or rather a huge amount of instances, not in idle but in error state, way more than I see on 111. And I'm still not sure why that is. I cannot reproduce it so far, but maybe if your printer is reporting an error state in your UI more often than before you started using 2.0 RC, then please get in touch and open a ticket or something and help me to get to the bottom of why so many state reports are coming in with the printer ran into an error. Because I think if the printer actually ran into an error, then I would hear about that. But for some reason, I'm only seeing these states and I'm not getting any reports back. It could be something as simple as the new connector, for some reason, is always switching into an error state when you shut off the printer, which before it didn't, or something like that. But I would prefer to understand this before I push this out to the masses. So basically my call to action here, more tests please, and anything that looks off, especially a printer that suddenly, or rather a state that suddenly reports printer disconnected with an error or something more often than it did with 111, please tell me about it. Why, what you did, how did you reproduce it, and maybe also share logs and such. So that I can understand what is going on there. And screenshots as well, because the error so usually contains, not extains, this is not English. The screenshot usually contains, or the error usually contains the reason for the error. Okay. What else will I be doing? Summer vacation. Yeah, the first year of this half, there, yeah, you get my point. The first half of this year has been intense. Also, it's getting warm in here, which is maybe turning the brain back into mush again. So the first half of this year has been quite intense with 2.0 and 111, various bug fixes for that, and some health stuff, both on my side and people on the side of people that I care about. 2 heat waves now, the second one of which broke several national records, and reality in general. I think I don't have to explain to you what I mean with that. So yeah, at the end of July, I'm or something like that, I'm really looking forward to some relaxing days with my partner on the North Sea coast again, We are renting e-bikes again, and will spend a lot of time cycling around with them, and hopefully also swimming and just bird watching and enjoying some calm, relaxing days, and also playing games in the evenings as well, because that has become a bit of our vacation tradition to play at least one game together. And just like the Curl project, I've also announced a Summer of Bliss for OctoPrint, which means that from July 13th until August 23rd, that's 6 weeks, there will be no processing of any security reports at all anymore. OctoPrint is thankfully not as affected with all of these Gen AI generated or supported reports as other projects, but still, I recently received 5 rather sloppy reports within 20 minutes, and that made me come to the conclusion that maybe a Summer of Bliss, or rather a specific time frame during which security issues would not see any processing and such, over my vacation, and also sometime before and after, so I don't get into my vacation completely exhausted from security issues, and I also don't come out of my vacation and immediately get dragged back into that and lose any kind of relaxation that I got from the vacation within 3 days. So a little bit of buffer all around it, and the hope that by announcing this early and also putting it in the security policy, that will, pretty much manage expectations accordingly with regards to my response time and such. And that also means that for the first time in over a decade, I don't have to actually check my emails, my Octoprint related emails during my vacation, which will be amazing. Yeah. Because I always check them in case a security issue was reported. And this vacation, nope. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Don't put your OctoPrint instances on the public internet. Don't put it on a hostile network. That way, you usually are not looking at really big issues anyhow. And I'll take a look at security issues reported during this time after August 23rd again. And between July 13th and August 23rd, anything will just rest in that regard. It's just too much. Okay, and then what else? After my vacation, there is also another event that I will attend, and that will be FrostCon, the free and open source software conference, which will happen from August 15th to August 16th, as you see, still in the Summer of Bliss. And I put the Summer of Bliss over that as well, because I didn't want to spend the whole conference checking for security issues. In St. Augustin, that is near Bonn in Germany. And as you can see here, I happen to give a keynote there about adventures in open source development, the good, the bad, and the ugly, on the first day, on Saturday. And should you be in the vicinity, the event is free, so you can just come by and say hi, and watch me and Timothy on that was the support donkey plushie, if you remember, on stage giving this talk for an hour or something like that, and the rest of the time I will look around and see what else there is to see. This will actually be my second FrostCon. The first one was back in 2008, and ever since then I've always tried to make it work again to go, and so far the stars never did align, and so it's kind of amazing to return as a keynote speaker to a conference that I haven't set foot on in 18 years. Yeah, so awesome. Yeah. And that was actually all that I had to talk to you about today. The next one of these will most likely be in August, because I don't see me being able to squeeze one in still before my vacation. And it would also be quite short then, because there is not that much time left to actually have a lot to talk about then. But yeah, thanks for being here. As always, I hope it was interesting seeing a bit behind the curtain of developing this software. Even though I know it can be a bit technical and dry here and there when I talk about all of the stuff that I run into, and it's not that fancy, but rather just work. But this is how OctoPrint gets created. This is the stuff that I have to constantly think about and do. So I just share it here for you all as well, so that you know. Yeah. And with that being said, as always, stay. Yeah, it's getting warm in here. Stay healthy and happy printing. Bye.